Editor Oren Nahari, you're still here, by the General Director of Peace Now, Yariv.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And also on the phone via Skype by Professor of Political Studies at Bar-Ilan University, President of NGO Monitor, Professor Gerald Steinberg. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to start with you, Oren Nahari, because the Orange CEO, and actually the Orange saga that we dealt with a lot last week, and I think the country of Israel, if one was living here, was dealing with it mostly within the media. That was a phenomenal trail back from a statement to now the Orange CEO is about to arrive in Israel as a, in a visit, and most likely, kiss the Prime Minister of Israel. How did this come about?
On his knees, yes. So how did it come about? He made a faux pas. Let's be clear about it. And his statement, and I think he probably meant it. And after that, received all kinds of hints. And perhaps understood that he cannot do it from political and financial point of view, and he was faced with the risk of losing perhaps tens or even hundreds of millions of euros in compensation damages. So now he tries his best without.
But this led also to Hollande calling Netanyahu to Fabius.
Yes. It was all in the making. The problem is that well, there are so many problems.
Yes.
That these two events coming one on the heels of the other, the FIFA Congress and now the problem of Orange. We are a country of extremes. Either we are in deep down in despair, or we are the rulers of the world. There's no middle in Israeli politics. So in these two events, you can see either people saying, we showed them everything, they are coming on their knees, and we beat them, nothing to worry about, or look at it, the entire world is going to boycott us. So again, there are so many things to say about it. I'll say one thing that I think is the most important. Netanyahu is right, in my opinion, when he says that the ultimate goal of the BDS movement, the BDS movement, is really not 67 Israel, but 47 Israel, meaning they want to, in one way or another, delegitimize the state of Israel, not only the conquest of 1967, but they are not the battlefield. The battlefield is Europe. The battlefield is the campuses and the universities in the United States. The battlefield is the new generation of Israelis and Jews, and around the world they are liberal, they are for Tikkun Olam, they are for, let's say, some kind of a solution to the Palestinian problem. I don't know if it's in the making, if it can be happened, but this is the problem. We are fighting on their souls. We are fighting for not only for, let's say, agricultural product, whether they'll be from the Golan Heights,
rather than for the support.
But we are fighting in the academia, we are fighting everywhere, and the fight is there, not against the BDS. The BDS, it's a lost cause.
Professor Gerald Steinberg with us, I want to ask you, because what Oren Nahari is mentioning is very true, and we've seen that, and we hear that from people in the United States, we hear it in Europe. Look at the student union in the UK. It is that battle. I'm putting BDS for a second on the sidelines of the academia losing, the world, so to speak, next brains and minds, hearts and souls, whatever you want, in their support for Israel, even, Jews. How can one combat that?
Well, beyond the academia, first of all, these pieces are all connected together. We can't really put BDS on the side because the same people, the same organizations, the same sources of money, which I'll talk about in a minute, are very active on the campuses. They're active in the labor unions. They're active in the churches. They're active across the board. They're active, of course, against the companies like Orange. We've got now in Zurich an organization called Breaking the Silence, maybe 10 Israelis, but they have $1 million actually Swiss francs now, to spread the concept, the indoctrination that Israel is a country of war criminals, that Israel doesn't follow international law. Those pieces are all put together, and they reinforce each other. It's certainly true that on the campuses, you've also got the addition of a very strong post-colonial ideology that says that the West is guilty, Israel is the spearhead of Western colonialism and neo-colonialism, and they talk about occupation. All these things are mushed together within this kind of ideology. But I think the main point that has to be added is there's a huge amount of money behind this. We're talking at least 100 to 200 million euros in dollars and francs, depending on how you count it. You've got organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch that single out Israel, that are obsessed by Israel. Ken Roth, the head of Human Rights Watch based in the U.S., has a very clear anti-Israel obsession. And whenever the opportunity arises, he says Israel violates international law, Israel commits war crimes. All those pieces are reinforced. We have to have a better diagnosis of the problem, and then we can start dealing with various solutions to that. And the solutions, as Oren has said, are not going from despair to great joy over a single victory or a single defeat, but understanding that we're in a political war. And the point that was made that this is the 47 borders, not the 67 issues, that's central in here. We need to be better at separating those two issues. We need a strategy. And up until now, we've had bits and pieces of a strategy. One of the purposes of the Edelson Saban summit that took place in Las Vegas a few days ago was to develop a coherent strategy. The Israeli government really hasn't done that.
And speaking of, the Israeli government, Yariv Oppenheimer, I'm sure that you saw also the reports that, and everybody's staying with us, you saw the reports of, I think it's 100 million shekels that are going to be allocated towards the battle for Israel's image or against the BDS. But when you look at that, maybe if you're listening to Professor Steinberg, breaking the silence, would you say that that is also an organization that is detrimental to the existence of Israel?
First of all, Breaking the Silence is an organization based on soldiers that fight in Gaza and risk their life. So I have a lot of respect for people that don't just write what they think, but also was there during the war, and I respect what they are doing. But I think that Gerald, with all my respect to his work, the issue of money is not so important. Sheldon Adelson has a lot of money. Some of the BDS people has some
a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not about the money, it's about the substance. And the world is ready to recognize, and not only to recognize, to support Israel as a Jewish democratic state, including the liberal Jews and the liberal people around the world. The world is not ready to accept Israel as a Jewish democratic and occupying state. This is exactly the point. And you can have a lot of money, you can have strategy, you can have billionaires. If you will not change the policy, the movement against Israel will get stronger and stronger. Some of it will be radical, like the BDS, that will call for the end of Israel as a Jewish state, but some of it, and the most important part of it, will be the one that are saying we are not ready to accept the occupation. And without stopping the occupation in the West Bank and what is going on around Gaza, until then, Israel cannot call itself a democratic state.
It's a very valid point, because if there is a strategy, and I'm asking everybody, if there is a strategy, and to you as well, Professor Steinberg, but doesn't this, if organizations are singled out, such as Breaking the Silence, which, as Yariv Oppenheimer mentioned, include soldiers, who serve in Israel's boards, and in a democratic state have a right to, say their opinion. Oren, Nahari, we're looking at a strategy. Hold on, Professor Steinberg, I'll be with you in a second. Are we looking at a strategy that can also separate them from, from the fabric of the Israeli society?
First of all, I would not like to silence anybody in any democratic society, be it from the right, be it from the left. I think it's an extreme measure, shouldn't be done. Let's continue from there. One of the strength points of Israel, when we come to show our good face, and we have it, to the world, is exactly that this is a democratic, that this is a liberal country, that this country will have a gay parade. These kind of things are better ambassadors for the state of Israel in Europe and in America than all the other things, perhaps not in Russia. One other thing, and that is important, and Yariv mentioned it. We are fighting, it is not only, and here perhaps I'm a little bit with odds with my friend Professor Steinberg, I do not think that this is one solid battle. That is one strategy to beat all. There is the BDS movement. There is our, let's say, diplomatic struggle with the EU. There is the academia, etc. And our weak point, even from a Hasbara point of view, is 1967, is the fact that there is not at the moment a peace process with the Palestinians, and the world, rightly or wrongly, blames Israel for it. The world is hypocrite, fine. This is the world, we have to deal with it. And one other thing is the point of the settlements. Not one, it has to be said honestly, not one country on the face of the earth accept that these settlements are part of Israel, that they are legitimate. And this is our weak point, and this has to be dealt. And the money of Mr. Edelson and Mr. Saban and even the government of Israel, and it is important, important that they contribute, that they do it. This is, let's say, the attitude that would have worked years before. Now in the campuses, you have to convince people that you are right with the social media, with the other places, in the Hillel and the other places. And this is our weak point, and we have to have initiative, not only against the BDS, political and strategic initiative to show that we are the ones who want peace, that there are problems, there are security, whatever you want, but still that we are leading in that area. This will be the best Hasbara that we can get. Not against the BDS again, but on the fight for the diplomacy and the statehood of Israel in Europe, let's say.
Professor Steinberg, I see, I'm sure that you want to react, but in terms of that there cannot be just one strategy, because at the end of the day, and again, I'm going to say put the BDS aside, because in Europe there are groups, there are foreign ministers that are calling to boycott settlements and have been calling to boycott settlements because they are not recognized internationally as valid or lawful.
Look, I agree with everybody on the panel in terms of there's a lot of complexity here. Different audiences require different messaging. We need to have a complex approach, and we can't simply ignore the diplomatic aspect of that. It would be good, certainly, to have at least a pretend peace process in the sense of going through the motion, just like the Palestinians do. And I think even Yariv would agree with me that the Palestinian leadership does not really have a peace process. But it does appeal. The language and the sense of victimization does appeal. That's a part of it, and we need to be able to deal with that as well. But on the other side, just to have a peace process, just to have negotiations has never worked either. We need to understand that, for instance, a lot of the funding that's going to the organizations that are trying to, that call Israel an apartheid state, again, that's not about 67, it's 47, 48. Israel's an apartheid state. Israel's a country of war criminals. Israel's a racist state because of the Bedouin, the Negev, and because of
Professor
the
Steinberg,
minority.
I'm only going to hold you for a second just because we've got about 20 seconds left, and I know that Yariv wants to react really quickly.
I think we need to understand that the occupation is not a PR problem, is a crucial issue. And as long as the world believes that the occupation is going to come to an end because Israel wants to withdraw from the West Bank, the world will see us as a democratic state. But if we will say the occupation is part of our policy, our values, the lesson, the message will be we are not a democratic state anymore. This is the problem.
Irrespective of your opinions, this is all the time that we had. Do stay with us. When we get back, Dash is